Assuming is a bad thing to do, mostly because of the connotation, but I'm going to assume you clicked on this video because you have at least some awareness of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and or Elden Ring, and you really want to see what I, a hopefully optimistic yet terrible YouTuber with a little too much time on their hands, has to say about these games. If that describes you, nice. Thank you for the views. If you're one of the 300 something odd subscribers returning to watch my video, nice. Thank you for your patience. But if you have no idea what this stuff is and you just decide to watch this video for whatever odd reason, nice. Thank you for watching. And please like and subscribe, and because that would be so dope. Alright, enough of the content creator preamble. So, I guess I can answer the initial question of why I made this video. Well, I'm 31 years old and I'm pretty lucky and privileged of being able to enjoy playing some video games. Not to get soapy or sappy, but sometimes reflecting on little stuff like that gives you a different perspective and you're learning what's life all about. Or maybe it was the drugs part of my last video that got to me. But whatever, we're here now. And X amount of years into the future, when we're all talking about what modern consequential titles just messed up the landscape of video games, we're going to mention Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring. There's just no way around it. When these games came out in their respective times, almost 5 years apart too, it caused a storm. People everywhere were talking about these games. Critics were giving out perfect 10s and sales were ridiculous. Long discussions and arguments over these games being among the greatest of all time. And that wave lasted throughout their respective years and also nabbing Game of the Year accolades left and right. Elden Ring just came out last year, so its lasting impact is still to be proven, but Breath of the Wild came out in 2017 and we are still talking about it. Zelda proved to be a mainstay on the conversation of masterpiece video games. So much so, Nintendo decided to make a spin-off like prequel with Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity and a direct sequel with Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah, I'm excited about Tears, so damn, I wish I could play that game right now. But yeah, Breath of the Wild, it's a good ass game. Elden Ring, just a little over a year old, might prove itself to be a mainstay in conversation in the years to come. Bandai Namco announced a month after Elden Ring's release, they will be expanding the brand beyond the game itself. And the DLC Shadow of the Erdtree just got announced recently, and that was huge. Almost like they just announced a brand new game. I am 100% confident Elden Ring will still be in the conversation 5 or so years from now. So you got these games being absolute cultural events in the entertainment world. But why these two? Are these games as good as what people say? Yeah, I'll answer that question right away. Just say yes. Next question. Why are these games just so good? Well, that's what this whole video is for. These games are way more similar than we probably realize, and I'm talking about the feelings. Listen, as much as we can try to be objective about the quality of these games, we gotta admit the reason why so many people like them is because they had a great time with it. A connection was formed, feelings were felt, all that lovey-dovey stuff, and boom, we got universal acclaim, baby. Both were met with anticipation, both came out days after a Horizon video game release, and both got people gushing about how amazing they are. Okay, I'm doing a poor job answering the question of why these games are good. Well, let's talk about it. Then let's talk about why Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring are bad. And then let's talk about why they're great again. What's up? My name is Super This Way, and I'm here to talk about two of my favorite games ever. Recency bias notwithstanding. Just to lay out some ground rules, I'm going to spoil Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring, both visually and narratively, so back out now before we take off on this dumb train wreck of a video. I also will have some context and references throughout the video, so you can check those out. Shout out to these people for having some good stuff out there so I can read and watch regarding these games. Okay, that's basically it. However you watch this video, I hope you enjoy it. If you click on this video while enjoying a meal, that's the best. And I hope that's the best freaking meal you've ever eaten. It's an honor and a privilege to talk about Zelda, Elden Ring, open world games, art, and if any of this even matters. Cue up the title card. Boom! Just because I want to, let's start with some backstory. First up, Zelda. Back in 2011, The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword was released on Nintendo Wii. Its reception was sort of mixed. It did get a lot of positive reviews due to the story and unique gameplay. However, it's the modern Zelda game that hasn't been the best received due to its motion controls not being totally responsive, as well as having repetitive and annoying features and mechanics. Of course, with the Zelda series being a pillar of Nintendo, the team is already underway with preparations for the next entry in the series. So, Eiji Aonuma, the man basically behind every Zelda game since Ocarina of Time on Nintendo 64, which is basically like 90% of the series, and Hidemaru Fujibayashi, the director of Skyward Sword, and probably one of the most underappreciated names in the industry right now, and the rest of the team got right back to work for the next entry. Then, in a 2013 Nintendo Direct, Aonuma officially announced they are working on a Zelda Wii U game coming out in 2015 with a theme of rethinking the conventions of Zelda. The ideas of completing dungeons in a certain order and playing by yourself were cited in the announcement, which led to a lot of fan speculation. I'll go more in depth about these conventions and the idea of a Zelda game, because it's definitely worth a discussion on its own, both in a positive and negative light. Funny enough, the one convention they didn't rethink about was delays. Every so often, Nintendo released new tidbits and updates about the progress for it. The deepest look we got for its gameplay came in a showcase with Aonuma and Shigeru Miyamoto, which looked really impressive. Then when 2015 arrived, Aonuma announced the game was delayed due to the snowball effect of the freedom in exploring new ideas. The team got really excited and they changed priorities. Instead of focusing on releasing in 2015, their goal was to make the most complete Zelda game they possibly could. They didn't even give a general release window for it. Not to think that there were any other factors, but let me put on my tinfoil hat. A maybe unrelated elephant in the room was the Wii U. See, the Wii U was underperforming, and later in 2015, there were talks about the next Nintendo console, at the time codenamed the NX. Obviously, the major idea was making the next Zelda game be a launch game for the NX a la Twilight Princess. And yada yada yada, not much Zelda info for a full year until E3 2016, but lots and lots of rumors for the NX. Nintendo's presence at E3 was pretty much just Breath of the Wild. They showed off the first official trailer, as well as giving guests the opportunity to play a demo. People were really engrossed with the game, which only made the anticipation bigger, but Nintendo was still mum about a release date, mostly due to the looming inevitability of the NX, which was absent at the show. A few months later, the NX got unveiled as the Nintendo Switch with a short teaser about the hybrid console. And finally, in January 2017, the Switch got a full rollout announcement with the big news that Zelda will be a launch title for the console. Breath of the Wild was finally released on March 3rd, 2017, and history changed. Then it happened again with Elden Ring 5 years later, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. When FromSoft wrapped up on Dark Souls 3 DLC, Ringed City, they worked on two projects concurrently, Sekiro and Elden Ring. Eventually, Sekiro was released in March 2019 to great success with sales and accolades like nabbing Game of the Year in 2019 at the Game Awards. FromSoft's reputation has solidified itself as a premier game developer. Now, a funny part here is that a few minutes after Sekiro was released, Elden Ring was announced at E3 2019 with a CGI trailer shown, as well as the announcement of George R.R. Martin's involvement in the game. No release date or gameplay was revealed, but information about the development process came out and confirmed how R.R. Martin worked on the mythos and lore, and how they were able to develop Sekiro and Elden Ring at the same time with a co-director structure. And then a global pandemic happened, which showed off just how broken everything is in the United States, and also probably had a hand in delaying Elden Ring. From like the bare amount of research I've done for this video, the game did get delayed, though not officially, since there wasn't a whole lot of information coming from FromSoft or from Bandai Namco. Apparently it was supposed to come out in late 2020 to 2021, but with the pandemic affecting all aspects of productivity and life, it just wasn't going to make that kind of release window. No concrete info besides the initial announcement was provided, which wasn't also very much since it was just a CGI trailer with no context, vague statements, and no gameplay footage. Now that I think about it, news about Elden Ring were more informed through rumors or leaks. George R.R. Martin's involvement got leaked and then teased, and footage of the gameplay also got out there too. Prime example of modern game leaks, that's for sure. Some rumors suggested the game was supposed to appear at certain shows, but they backed out almost at the last minute due to the lack of polish on the title. Again, not necessarily a sign of trouble development, just how serious FromSoft was about introducing more of the game in the best way possible. That gameplay leak in early 2021, which we got a look at some of the open world elements and the little bit of horse combat. Eventually, we got a real look during the Summer Games Fest that year. A full length trailer with extensive gameplay was revealed, and the hype was instant. A playtest opened up during September, and that made more people excited about how good the game felt, which only built the anticipation. And soon, after a 1-month delay, Elden Ring caused an earthquake on February 25th, 2022, almost 5 years after the earthquake of Zelda. So, what do these backgrounds got to do with anything? To show how Rome wasn't built in a day, game development is tough. Creating a complex system in a huge environment is a process involving hundreds and hundreds of people and many years. Sure, yeah, you can have one-person teams make games today, but that's still a huge effort to be able to crank out any kind of game, no matter how complex it can be. And for most of these games, they are not made by a single visionary. It's a collaborative effort between many different disciplines. Honestly, it should be considered a miracle every time a video game of this scale and caliber gets even made. A lot of the magic the games Nintendo and FromSoft have made is the work of many people working together and hoping it just works out. Nintendo has been a leader of video games for almost 50 years, developing and publishing all kinds of games, as well as just having a basic understanding of making video games fun. FromSoft has made games for quite a while as well too, but they're in this new era of having the reputation of making high quality AAA stuff. They've been the prime examples of level design and responsible for the popularity of a subgenre. There's a lot more I can go in depth, but the basic gist is these were the first open world games these devs have done, and while they have inspiration from other titles, they really took in the challenge of making a compelling open world games, and by God they did it. Of which we should talk a little about the inspiration behind Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring. You see, this game was pretty influential in its design and mechanics and sense of wonder. And of course, I'm talking about Shadow of the Colossus. Look, I'm not the biggest fan of it. Keep in mind, I played it for the first time last year, and it was the remake version, not even the original, so I probably didn't play it at the optimal time. I still maintain Shadow of the Colossus is a good game. It just has some frustrating control mechanics that ruin my perception of it. I can't really tell if it's a sensitivity of holding onto stuff, or if Wander, the main character, is really just messing with me and being a little bastard about things, but I have a high tolerance for mechanics that work against the players. I get it. It makes sense when implemented well. I like to have fun, and when those mess-ups happens, I'd like to feel like it was my mistakes and not some finicky system, and I hate this stupid bull. But I can't deny when the game gets going, and oh yo, it gets really going. The sense of scale is felt by the open world, bosses, and weight of the story, and the great thing about it is it's pretty simple. The giant kaijus are majestically godlike, and you take them down one by one. The combat is straightforward but not dull, and the overworld is barren, but there's a certain charm to it, and as if you're razor focused on your mission. The story is a classic tale of a dude trying to save the love of his life from death. All this blended together, and it's not really a game you play for entertainment, but a game where you play for an experience. The immersion of its gameplay and setting is this game's best trait, and the devs behind it have done an incredible job with it. There's an intrigue with Shadow of the Colossus because while both Nintendo and FromSoft were directly inspired by Shadow of the Colossus, it's been a cult classic and favorite among fans. They formed a personal connection and considered to be an important game for some individuals. Also, like, come on, Adam Sandler and Don Cheadle played this game in a movie. I believe if you want to understand and contextualize the magic behind these two games, it would help a lot if you play Shadow of the Colossus. Alright, end tangent 3 of 108. That's enough backstory out of the way. Let's get into the meat or protein or the beans. The cool beans. Because I'm talking about two huge games, I figured I could break it up by sections and compare and contrast the two. For this side of the video, we're going to be talking about the great amazing stuff that each of these games has, the reasoning behind these games are so successful, and it starts with the gameplay loop. When it comes to open world games, there has to be more than just combat fun part. The genre calls for a huge open world map, a traversal system, collecting items, and quests. A lot of the content is quote unquote filler, because you gotta fill these open world games with stuff to do, otherwise the player is just gonna be walking for a long time with nothing to accomplish. In Breath of the Wild's case, there's combat, traversal, side quests from small to big, shrines which are mini dungeons, the divine beasts which are the legacy dungeons that are known throughout the Zelda series, puzzles, boss fights, and probably like 10 or 12 more things I forgot to include. The combat utilizes a weapon system, one-handed, two-handed, and spear and staff weapons. There are quite a bit of different kind of melee options, but they do fall into that 3-type category. You're also able to wield bows and arrows and use these elemental powers such as magnetism, remote bombs, and stasis. This was a huge departure for the Zelda formula when it comes to combat, since for the most part, a sword is your main weapon, but you do get to use some gadgets. It was fun to be able to pick up new weapons little throughout the Hyrule and also feel like you got a little collection going on. The traversal system is arguably the biggest game changer with the 1-2 punch of climbing and the sail cloth. You can climb almost anywhere in the overworld, which is a pretty amazing thing. Now you don't have to walk around tall mountains, you can just climb up the side provided you get clever about finding flat enough surfaces to recover your stamina. You can also travel by horse, which has this cool feature of your horse riding on its own. The sailcloth allowed you to paraglide through long distances, which was so useful. You can glide up in the air when there's a fire going on, yay physics, and glide downhill, which felt so buttery smooth. The side quests can be simple as minor fetch quests to elaborate ones like building a small town from scratch, which is one of my favorite side quests ever. The shrines serve as one of the main elements of the game, be it essential to complete in order to upgrade your health or stamina, as well as getting fast travel marks. The divine beasts are the legacy dungeons. The level design follows the traditional concept of a Zelda dungeon without the dungeon item the series is known for. Which, speaking of dungeon items, you get all the tools you would need at the tutorial, which you can use to solve almost all the mysteries and secrets in Hyrule. You get the camera when doing a quest. The game is littered with puzzles from the Korok seas to shrines and treasures, and the boss fights are sprinkled throughout the map, ranging from giant beasts to terrifyingly aggressive Lynels. And then there are many more elements, but these are the main ones that pop up for Zelda. Now, for Elden Ring's gameplay loop, it follows an almost similar path. You got combat, traversal, side quests maybe, cave dungeons, legacy dungeons, and lots of boss fights, and even more combat. The combat is heavily based on Dark Souls series style, with a particular focus on weapon arts and the jump button, the best button in gaming history. The weapon system is incredibly deep with a large amount of different kinds of arms and staff, each with a unique feature, animation, skills, as well as weapon arts that you can collect. As for the traveling around throughout the open world, Elden Ring lets you call a horse instantly and has the most responsive horse controls I've ever played in a single player game. Now I want all future games that uses a horse to traverse through an open world to implement this instant summon. I don't care if the game logic doesn't make sense, it's gotta be done. Side quests are there. It's fair to call these weird events and tasks you do to be side quests, even though I'm sure there are many players who have done these and had not even realized it. There isn't a quest log for Elden Ring besides remembering some of the esoteric details about NPCs or the items you find. But I will say how secrets and puzzles unfold throughout the game, no matter how esoteric it was so dope. It really felt like a sense of discovery when hitting the wall did work this time. The cave dungeons function similarly to Breath of the Wild in being bite-sized and puzzle combat focused, except in Elden Ring there are bosses ready to pound on you for daring to reach the end. The legacy dungeons are really elaborate castles that have unique environments like Lava Castle and Poison Castle and Wizard Castle and another Wizard Castle. These dungeons follow closely to the elaborate dungeons in previous FromSoft games. A unique element for Elden Ring is the amount of bosses in this game. Like, a whole lot of bosses are scattered all throughout the lands between. The other factor is while there are repeats of bosses, there's still a huge variety of boss designs. The main gameplay loop of Elden Ring is the combat. Yeah, you can do a bunch of other stuff, but most of the time you are squaring up with these fools and coming up with new ways to chop them down. Bosses, encampments, rabid rat dogs with wings, freaking bears, you gotta put them down in the coolest way possible. Now, what's Zelda and Elden Ring got in common for their gameplay? Well, it's gotta be how they handle their open worlds with how they implemented the combat and traversal and turning that into a sense of wonder and freedom. The combat in both games call for experimentation. In Breath of the Wild's case, weapons are everywhere since they break fast, but you can also use the environment, tools, and elements to give yourself an edge or a breather. Elden Ring allows you to be absolutely weird or heavy or strong or fast and deadly, creating many different kinds of builds and getting inspired by watching other players, bringing in a whole new level of individuality and practicality to the fights. The deep weapon system works out so well. Then the traversal. For Zelda, I think climbing as a mechanic being paired with a sailcloth is brilliant. You climb up almost anything, and then from whatever high spot you're on, you can glide through the sky to another point of interest. Definitely you're feeling like nothing is in your way. Elden Ring doesn't have the climbing, but what it does have is torrent, instant summon, and the best horse controls. All put together, this creates a dynamic and actually fun mode of traveling and fighting. Personally, mounts in a lot of games feel pretty stiff, even in Breath of the Wild, but Elden Ring just tuned it to what it needed to be. Instant to call, simple to use, and reliable. Not to mention the double jump with this gold horse is so satisfying, which leads to how these mechanics make these games work. By having experimentation in the combat paired with a simple and effective traversal gameplay, players are able to engage with these huge open worlds much more to their own sense of style and wonder. I can't stress enough how important these elements are to making Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring work so well, especially in the open world space. Speaking of which, I'm gonna go on a longish tangent here, so please bear with me. It goes without saying one of the main aspects of why Zelda and Elden Ring are so good is the open world nature of these games. Now, here's a fact. These games are not the first open world games ever made. No, far from it. The idea of open world games is intriguing. Create a world where you can go anywhere and complete the goal however you want. Tickles a part of the brain in a good way. And devs have been trying to recreate that feeling for 50 plus years. Yeah, you heard that right. I'm not going to get into too much of the nitty gritty of the history of open world gaming because I'll lose focus. This is not a video about open world games, and I don't have the time to go over the history of it. Den of Geek has a really good write-up on this idea of the first title that fits into that definition. So, look at that. The concept of open world games in the modern context is pretty simple. Have a huge map and fill it with stuff to do. However, this idea is a modern phenomenon. I don't want to break your brain, but video games as a whole are a very recent thing in art. Compared to all kinds of art, this is where video games fall in the timeline, which is very, very brief, not like this video at all. The first video game was probably sometime in 1950, so yeah, humans are terrible about perceiving time. It's actually funny as far as seeing technological improvements over the years during the early ages of video games before we get into this modern, mature, and just seeing the playability and graphics is like, wow, that's a huge difference. And I can imagine it's like when film directors discover you can edit the footage together. Okay, I'm getting way off track. Modern open world games is a pretty newish thing, and well, The Legend of Zelda is right there. Since we're already talking about Breath of the Wild, we don't have to spend a lot of time talking about the OG Zelda. It's arguably one of the most influential games ever made, and that probably crosses into art too. It was Nintendo's first open world game for sure. I can say there are a lot of open world games and they all share similar mechanics. The basics are a big map and then finding specific towers or places to unlock the map of an area, an ungodly amount of collectibles, side quests from short to elaborate, fun minigames, games and how you can forget the classic audio tapes, journals, lore, info. Both Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring are prime examples of masterpieces in this genre. Well, at least Breath of the Wild. Again, this is nothing against Elden Ring, it's just that time isn't on its side yet. It's got a strong resume and very little depth, but it's still youngling, building up its credit score, so yeah. It's gonna take a little moment before people start realizing it. I think it's hard to escape conversations or arguments about a lot of games getting compared to Breath of the Wild, whether for its art style, open world mechanics, or other traits. It's a game that has sold almost 30 million copies, the most in the series. For many, this is their first Zelda game and probably their first quote-unquote hardcore game as well, which reminds me of one of my favorite tweets ever. This is not to say we are wrong to be comparing every upcoming game with this one, just that we as humans and gamers love to compare stuff. Plus, it's hard to argue against the idea that so many people just love Breath of the Wild. Yeah, I do. Inadvertently, Zelda created some sort of standard for gamers out there when it comes to the open world genre, much in the same way Super Mario 64 did for 3D platforms, and Fortnite for live service battle royale type games. Hell, this video is attributing a lot of the standards to Breath of the Wild just because, well, it just did a phenomenal job. Yes, this Zelda game is not a new concept with open world or exploration, but we gotta admit that Breath of the Wild did a lot of the open world tropes better than many other games. A concept behind open world is to see a few points of interest wherever the player is at so they get intrigued and engage with it. The more they engage, the more they play the game. Fallout series is a great example of this philosophy. Now, Breath of the Wild has all of that stuff, to which the argument changed. How does this game do it better than all these other open world titles? Well, they made it fun. This is not to say open world games are stagnant and boring. Mostly they just become sort of repetitive with these ideas. Yes, there are a ton of quests and side quests, but most of the time they're really just a few types of missions copied and pasted several dozens of times and set in different locations with different NPCs. I actually contextualized this when playing Ghost of Tsushima. It's a fine game at all, but when I played it, I had a nagging feeling something felt monotonous. It finally clicked when I was going through the motions and fighting the bandits, and somehow there was a certain beat the game followed. But this game is beautiful, and like you can't argue this mode wasn't cool even though the colors are just so gorgeous. I'd imagine a lot of people had this feeling when they played Horizon Forbidden West, even though it's a good ass game. Now, I'm not saying Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring changed up the formula and crushed it, but I am. Zelda felt unique in a sense where your level of freedom is imperative to completing missions and quests. You wanted to keep discovering what was around the corner, and a big part was Nintendo really inviting players to explore. Giving players the ability to climb everywhere and go anywhere anytime they want to create a sense of danger, risk, and intrigue. You're meant to play with the tools you have. I would even go far as to say that devs don't mind that there were these bugs where you can dart across the map or have infinite flight, but like, this is so cool. And maybe it's inspiration for this. I also think having the verticality of climbing mountains created a new sense of exploration and experimentation. You don't have to walk around or spend several minutes trying to find some random flat surfaces so you can get to the top, because you can just climb it and voila, nothing gets in your way. The experimentation also comes into play since you're able to just climb up and get a new vantage point at any time. An example is getting to Lanairu. You can follow the trail that'll get you to the Zora village, presumably the intended way, or you can climb over the mountains during the constant rainstorm and spend forever just so you don't fight enemies along the way. Another example is when infiltrating the Yiga camp in the Gerudo mountain area. You can sneak your way through the entire camp till you get to the boss, or you can just fly over to this section and boop, you're at where you need to be. Usually there is one or a limited number of ways to enter specific locations set in the mountains, but the ability to climb anything as long as your stamina holds provides such a boost to be able to play how you want to play. Yo, is this a Zelda video or what am I even doing? Let's go back to Elden Ring. If I thought Breath of the Wild is big, wow, I don't know how to compare maps, but Elden Ring is wombo size. There are biomes of sorts that make each section of the map unique, like Caelid just looks like hell, and then you got Lake of Rot that looks like hell, and then the Snowlands that look like a cold frozen version of hell, Pharma Azula, a floating city in hell, and Volcano Manor, which is a castle set in hell. I'm getting some hell vibes from this game now that I think about it. There is an immense sense of scale here, and it's not just the map size. The amount of caves and small dungeons, not to mention the insane number of cool, unique weapons and items you scavenge, and the crazy variety of enemies and bosses, and they are everywhere. It's filled to the brim all over, and I love it. And hate it, but mostly I love it. There are so many secrets you couldn't uncover, and a lot of them probably went over my head, so I'm not exactly sure if I even knew I found a secret at times. And like many other open world games, you can clear enemy camps and fight some bosses from any direction and get the treasure or cool Ash of War. I also think a huge factor in Elden Ring's success is following Breath of the Wild's footsteps. Look, yeah, Elden Ring did have some inspiration of Zelda. I know I'm a human gamer, and I just compared a game to Breath of the Wild. Sue me. Elden Ring has the same feeling of exploration through some of the intrigue with the combat and enemy variety. Zelda's side was more whimsical, and Elden Ring has a cool, ooh, what's this strange creature that can kill me? Or my personal favorite, this enchanting opera singer is just a bat that will kill me. Nothing special. Thank you, Miyazaki. FromSoft utilized the sheer size of each section and world to entice the players to roam around. There's always a feeling where you need to peel off more and more, thinking you might have missed a secret here or there, enticing you with views into a room in a castle or an island far off. Because Elden Ring's deep gameplay mechanics involving the ability to use melee weapons and or sorceries or incantations, having ashes of war and spirits, and using the many available items at your disposal, you are going to find a lot of different things throughout the world, and each little thing is at the very least interesting to try out. The reward of playing through each section is generally treasure, sure, but there's a desire to best these bosses. That's the main draw of Elden Ring, to conquer these fools. Both Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring take all the good elements of an open world game and made the idea of beating the game open-ended. There is no right or wrong way to tackle a situation or win. All the tools are at your disposal. It's up to you to create your own sense of warrior adventure spirit for how you want to play this game. I play them the way I wanted to play it. It's an undertaking making an open world game. It's an even greater challenge to make it unique enough to separate it from all the other games, especially as more and more kinds of games are getting made within this genre. What Nintendo and FromSoft did was make these games stand on their own as unique titles in the open world gaming space. Another trait these two games share is their storytelling and how they incorporate their sense of freedom and exploration into the story as well. There's precedence in the Zelda series to have experimental elements with their narrative with Majora's Mask and Link's Awakening, and FromSoft has never shied away from being entirely vague and minimal. Following the breaking conventions of Zelda formula's idea, Breath of the Wild's story is very simple and straightforward. Link wakes up after 100 years and he needs to head to Hyrule Castle and chop Ganon's head off. That's the logline. The real story of Breath of the Wild is remembering the friends who got killed along the way. It's just that it's buried in the background. In keeping with the theme of exploration and freedom, the narrative unfolds through the environment, conversations with various NPCs, item descriptions, memories and flashbacks, and revelations from certain quests. Depending on how you progress through Breath of the Wild, you can complete many missions without talking to the quest giver like Impa or Cass. In fact, once you clear the plateau, you can go straight to Ganon and roll credits without setting foot anywhere else in Hyrule. This all meant giving the player the agency to take in the story however they want. The freedom of player's choice Nintendo employs through the open world, combat, and exploration also bled into the narrative. Elden Ring, on the other hand, follows previous Souls-like entries from FromSoft. The story is super vague with barely an explicit concept. You are tarnished and you need to collect remnants of a ring and claim the title of Elden Lord. It's a pretty simple concept, but there are treasure troves of lore and backstory littered throughout the lands between to enrich it. It's also vague as hell, not that it's a bad thing. The small tidbits of information given by NPCs or item descriptions does give you an idea of what the world is/was like, and how certain characters have adapted or carry on in this messed up world. But you gotta do some heavy digging to confirm some obscure details, or do what a lot of FromSoft fans do already and watch VOD's video or ask Reddit. The story is a lot more intricate and involved, but it's not quote unquote necessary to appreciate the game. However, it does enhance the experience, especially when you have 6 different endings that can occur. Just like previous FromSoft titles, the devs want players to interpret the stories themselves, giving you breadcrumbs and loose strings to come up with your own headcanon. This works well with how huge this map is and the likelihood players will not complete every single thing here, which leads to my favorite post on Reddit being like, what's the lore of this dude in this place? So what's up with the narratives of both Zelda and Elden Ring? They function on being in the background, not to distract the player too much, or in other words, let the player feel the story through their actions. Breath of the Wild's story is mainstream of the two, but that's not the argument. The player has the agency to seek a lot of the important story beats to fully understand it. Same with Elden Ring. Elden Ring takes it a step much further by being really esoteric and vague. A common refrain about Breath of the Wild's story is how it's not as fleshed out or quote unquote good compared to other games in the series. Here's me putting on my subjective objective hat now. That's not true. The difference between Breath of the Wild and other Zelda games is most of the story in here has already happened. The crux of the narrative is divided in 2 parts. Zelda and her struggles with not living up to the expectations everyone has on her, and the consequences and aftermath of an apocalyptic event that happened 100 years ago.
100 years.
100 years.
100 years ago.
100 years ago.
Just 100 years later.
Oh.
100 years ago.
just in case you needed a reminder how long Link was sleeping. Zelda's story arc is personal and tragic. She tries to awaken the powers that are within her, but she keeps failing. She's a brilliant young woman who is scientifically fluent and is able to have a certain confidence about what she is capable of. She does have insecurity regarding the freaking prophecy of her being the one to stop Ganon. At her 17th birthday, Calamity Ganon arrived and all hell breaks loose, but at the crucial moment she was able to save Link and suppress this mammoth beast for 100 years. The implication of this standoff was thrusting this large chunk of land into a sort of purgatory-like active volcano scenario on pause. Towns, tribes, and people have grown to live this new normal of living in a post-apocalypse. Survivors have somewhat rebuilt their lives, knowing these lands to be more dangerous with monsters roaming about. Those who have lived over 100 years ago reminiscence about the good old days, while descendants come to only know the greatness of Hyrule from stories and legends. Link's story is your story. Link has always been a symbol of the stand-in for the player character throughout the series. He's silent, and the most personality he has is his ability to make some facial expressions and some grunts. But I think the symbol of being the stand-in for you, the player, is much more apparent in Breath of the Wild, since it's up to you to uncover the story of the game. It's up to you to recover the memories and also restore your powers and hope against the evil forces. The story is told passively, but the subtext is much more apparent on my recent playthrough. And listen, I know the story is probably not the best in the series, and or you may not like it. I totally get it, but I'm gonna defend that it's still a good story. Look at the entire narrative arc here. Link has amnesia and does not remember his friends who were killed 100 years ago. He basically has lost almost everyone he knows and cared for, and everything. And yet you, I mean Link, pick yourself up with a sense of duty, courage, and grit, and you help many people all over the world rebuild Hyrule, avenge your fallen comrades, and then freaking annihilate Ganon. That's Link's/your journey, and it's so dope. I don't know, probably because I learned how to appreciate Breath of the Wild story from playing FromSoft games, and ooh, look at that. Now look, I cannot pretend I know the entirety of Elden Ring to give you a brief but accurate summary. What I can say is Queen Marika shattered a ring, which caused a cataclysmic event throughout the entire world, these games and their apocalypse. Your character, who's a Tarnish, is tasked with obtaining these great runes from these demigods and restore their ring. And as you progress, you talk to many different characters who all have different ideas, takes, and stakes on their Erd tree, the Golden Order, and life itself. Eventually, you gotta burn down the tree and either sacrifice your maiden and co-conspirator Melina, or you can join the shadow arts of the Deer Fingers and burn it yourself. Eventually, you destroy the capital too and go toe-to-toe with Radagon and the Elden Beast, and then, depending on what you have accomplished, you decide what you want to do with the Elden Ring. Just to make you aware, there is a lot more stuff going on than just that. Like, a whole lot. But my name is not Vatividya, and I can't even guarantee I'm 100% right about what I just said. A great thing about how Elden Ring tells its story is it basically relies on the player going through certain places at certain times depending on how you progress. There is a certain happy accident going on when you encounter some random dude way out here. Then it feels like you uncover some grand old mystery when you figure out some way out of their puzzle or clue. There's also a deeper subtext, especially with all the connections enemies, NPCs, and bosses have with one another. Gideon, the cool raspy sounding dude, planned for your murder when you got one half of the disc. Alexander Beljar is the coolest NPC with his compliments and just wants to just freaking fight you. The names Spirit, Ashes all having unique backgrounds, even one of them having a very specific and sad side quest. As far as these two stories go, I got a hot take. I really enjoyed both of them. They both have these make your own story out of it, even if Zelda is a lot more focal and present and Elden Ring is just more vague. Personally, I like the direction of Breath of the Wilds, but I also legit understand if people don't like the passive nature of the narrative. I think how the story is presented in Zelda serves the game and gameplay really well. It's a simple go, and the story is set to be interactive and up to how the player engages with it, much like how they can experiment with exploration and solving puzzles. Now for Elden Ring, it has an amazing story. There was a bit of a controversy during the 2022 Video Game Awards when Elden Ring was nominated for Best Narrative. Let's just say there was many people who didn't agree with that. Most of the criticism was, what story? Or even outright dismissal of that part of the game. Listen, the idea of stories needing to be linear or given is lazy and totally disrespectful to the art of storytelling itself. This also goes for Breath of the Wild too. There are many ways to spin up a tale, whether through words, song, visually, and or through mystery and intrigue. The style of how a narrative should unfold should serve the medium itself. The obvious criticism from FromSoft titles is their obscure storytelling method going over most gamers' head. But this criticism misses the point of it. Even if the narrative is told backwards or upside down, it doesn't mean the story is bad, just probably not your style. But also Also, look to other works where the narrative style is distinct. A mental story is told through the forward-backward structure. Before your eyes unfolds based on when you close your eyes. House of Leaves is a novel with several branching storylines all told in various and peculiar ways, from academic essays to stream of consciousness. These examples are taken from a film, video game, and novel, but they illustrate the importance of a narrative structure and how much it adds to the themes and ideas that they are conveying. For both Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring, their narratives serve the game that surrounds it respectively. Again, I enjoy both of these game stories and how they unfold. Zelda's story comes across well because Link has amnesia, and so it makes sense we would have to piece together memories and settle some unfinished business, if we choose to do it. Elden Rings is all kinds of weird and obscure, but having the agency of interpreting what is given to us is what makes the story work. Are the narrative structures within these two titles different than normal? Yeah, sure, but who cares? Alright, I'll stop talking about the stories of these games. I like to think that I got my point across. I just hope you understand that the narratives behind these games have a lot more depth to them than meets the eye. Cause we're on to my favorite part now. I have spent a bunch of time singing the praises of these two beautiful games, but now comes my favorite part. Being a hater. There's no such concept as an absolute perfect game, and even if Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring are two of the best games ever made, they still have issues. This part isn't a compare contrast since the issues are unique to the respective games. Let's start with Zelda. There are many quote-unquote issues people have raised. Story is not as strong or robust as previous Zelda titles. Final boss Ganon wasn't that difficult, etc. But those are pretty minor and nothing too distracting. The ones I'm going to talk about are the main detractors of the game where there is contempt for. Dungeon designs, what makes a Zelda game argument, and the freaking weapon system. First, the dungeons. Throughout each entry, there are a number of dungeons players have to clear through, and a lot of them are intricate and detailed. Nintendo has developed a reputation for designing some of the best level designs in these Zelda games, to the point where they've become a blueprint of sorts for other games employing the similar features. Dark Souls. For these Zelda fans who see dungeon level designs as an essential for a Zelda game, Breath of the Wild is too much of a departure. Just like how it bucks a lot of the trends of previous entries, it also mixes up the dungeon concept as well. Instead of having several deep and detailed dungeon levels, Nintendo opted for two main approaches, having shrines act as mini levels and having four somewhat traditional but simplified dungeons, the legacy dungeons. Depending on why you're a Zelda fan, this change can either be a heartbreak or maybe a nice change of pace. The shrines vary from a bite size to a whole ass side quest. There are shrines that are out in the open world and others where you have to complete certain quests or tasks to unearth them. The shrines also serve as two functions. When activating it, you create a fast travel spot, and when completing it, you obtain spirit orbs which you can trade in to increase your hearts or stamina. And 120 of these shrines really gets you all over the map and boosts your stats. A good number of these can be done within minutes, and it actually works out really nicely since these shrines take advantage of the best feature of playing a Nintendo Switch on the go. The traditional dungeons are set up in a divine beast. The layouts between each are different, but the rest of the traits are essentially the same. There's a way to tilt or change an aspect of the beast, mostly to help you access a room or help solve a puzzle. You have to find 5 terminals while the respective champion guides you from the grave, and the bosses are just elemental variations of Ganon. There is also Hyrule Castle, which is arguably the coolest dungeon in the Legend of Zelda series. It's a micro version of the world in Breath of the Wild where you can explore as much as you want, and there's tons of little nuggets and secrets you can uncover. It is huge and one of the strongest dungeons Nintendo has ever put in a Zelda title. But Hyrule Castle is only one level where there are 4 Divine Beast dungeons and 120 shrines. And as much as the castle is wicked cool for some fans, it's too little too late. The argument against the dungeon system within Breath of the Wild is that it breaks the norms of Zelda a little too much. Personally, I didn't mind it. At first. I do think the shrines do an excellent job on its own, mostly due to the bite-sized nature of it that works really well with Switch's gaming on the go philosophy. The 4 main dungeons aren't the most memorable, but they serve their purpose pretty alright. The issue I have with the shrines and Divine Beasts is the design language is the same. Every shrine looks like all the other shrines, and the Divine Beasts have the same beige scheme. In previous titles, each dungeon was so unique where the dungeon really echoed the biome or the environment. I totally get there's an in-universe explanation for the shrines and Divine Beasts to look very similar to each other, but it felt the lack of uniqueness. I do think Divine Beast would work so well if it had visual thematic design that was unique to each of the Divine Beasts. But Hyrule Castle is still so amazing on its own that it's definitely ranks up there as far as like all-time dungeon greats within the series. So for me personally, because it's my video, I didn't mind the dungeons and shrines, but I will say that part of the game hasn't aged the best, especially on my most recent playthrough. I don't have any qualms against it really, but it's a hot button issue, especially since this leads into my next attract there. A really fun debate amongst Zelda fans is what makes a Zelda game Zelda? These arguments are intriguing mostly because you can see what aspect of the series fans value. Fans often argue about which traits are the core tenets. Dungeons, as we just talked about, are some fans' core tenet. Others are the story or earning cool gadgets that will open up new parts of a map and area. This argument happens everywhere when it comes to Breath of the Wild, but you see the Legend of Zelda series has gone through so much change and shifted a lot in its identity as a franchise. But there are a lot of things about the series that makes it a Legend of Zelda game. Breath of the Wild was a huge departure from the formula that pretty much remained intact across 3+ decades, and it broke a lot of conventions. That's not to say no other Zelda game has done that before. Link's Awakening didn't have Zelda anywhere in the game. Zelda 2 was a side-scroller. Wind Waker opted for a drastic art direction. A Link Between Worlds allowed a weapon loan system that meant you would complete the game however you want. And Majora's Mask was weird, but they haven't done it to the level Breath of the Wild has. These games still had unique dungeons, story-based gadgets to solve puzzles, and an in-foreground story. Breath of the Wild said, nah, and this kind of broke a lot of fans' heart. Not necessarily because they believe Breath of the Wild is a bad game, but because it represents the possible future of Zelda games moving forward, as well as the idea that Breath of the Wild is a great game, but not a great Zelda game. Tears of the Kingdom, ooh, I can't wait, is a direct sequel to Breath of the Wild, and it looks to follow its lead, but it also looks like it would address some of the drawbacks too. The one thing to know about Nintendo is when it comes to Zelda games, they definitely take feedback to heart. So here's my 2 thoughts on the identity of Zelda games. If Nintendo says it's a Zelda game and this guy helped make it, it's a Zelda game, and the boomer Zelda fans shouldn't have to worry about the future of the series. Breath of the Wild is the most successful Zelda game for sure, but Nintendo as a game developer has always challenged itself when producing their mainline games, especially for the Zelda series. They take risks for each and every entry, and I believe they'll do it for Tears of the Kingdom and beyond. They also take feedback very seriously, like the art direction criticism of Wind Waker, which got us Twilight Princess, or even cleaning up the pain points in the 3D and HD remasters. I don't disagree about what are the core tenets of a Zelda entry, but I also trust the devs to prove themselves with whatever direction they take to make a quality Zelda game. Be that as it may, there is a general consensus among the fans for the biggest criticism for Breath of the Wild. The weapons are fragile as hell. I'm gonna hypothesize over how this fragile weapons design system came to be, so please bear with me. Nintendo created a combat system revolving around using weapons that weren't the Master Sword. They created 3 main melee weapon types, one-handed, two-handed, and spears. Then, they made a bunch of variations of each type, but they more or less function the same as the other weapons within that class. Hammers and great swords, lances and spears, and swords and sticks. You get the picture. The problem Nintendo needed to solve was how to get players to naturally, the key word, experiment with different weapons so players aren't just sticking to their favorite ones. The solution they came up with is having weapon deterioration. By having weapons be fragile and break, this would force the player to constantly switch to another weapon as well, or continue to pick up new weapons since an inventory space just opened up. In theory, this was a good idea. In practice, Nintendo probably made them a little too delicate. This is the biggest sticking point against Breath of the Wild, and for good reason. Weapons breaking, especially a little too quickly, is tolerable at best, but downright maddening at worst, and it was way more frustrating than it was tolerable. Breath of the Wild employs a vast open world, so yeah, you can find swords pretty easily, but when facing against tougher foes, the probability of losing a good number of your strong arms also increases. The weapon system Nintendo intended for players to experiment constantly was upended because players now calculated the risk of losing their stronger weapons when they strategize their counters, especially because you can't repair them. If a player was exploring a region, they have a pretty good stash of spears and claymores, they were more likely to just be hesitant of approaching the enemy encampment, especially if they decided loot and treasure was just not worth breaking 2 or 3 of their good stuff. The other aspect is how the devs did not offer a way to repair broken weapons or shields. So once it's gone, it's gone. And if you really like that one halberd or flame blade, you're gonna have to find it again if you remember where you found it in the first place. I know a few people who were really turned off by this mechanic that they couldn't beat the game or continue on, and I don't really blame them.
If it's not fun, why bother?
And this weapon system was not just like some side mechanic, it's literally ingrained into the combat. I just spent a bit of time being against the weapon system, and I have to say that on my most recent playthrough, I didn't mind it a lot. But that's not to say I think it's a good system now. My playthrough adapted to that just because I focused on using cooked food and elixirs more than before. I did play more into how the devs wanted me to play, but it doesn't make up for the fact that the weapons are a little too brittle. All in all, I think the intention was good, but the way it was implemented was rough, and I know almost all the fans are interested to see how Tears of the Kingdom's weapon system will pan out. So, basically, that covers my main gripes about Breath of the Wild, and that's the oh yeah, I got another game to hate. Ooh, yes! And now for Elden Ring. There are a number of reasons that set this game back from perfection for some people. First, because this is a FromSoft game from this evil troll, any criticism following difficulty or unfairness is not really valid, because those parts are intentional. I know some people who fell into the hype probably didn't appreciate how hard this game is or the hands-off approach compared to other open world titles. There are a few ones that are maybe bothersome, but there are a few times where the lack of guidance hinders the game. See, there isn't really a formal quest keeping section in the game. You have to keep conscious about how to continue certain missions and milestones. Millicent's questline is probably the most egregious example. Generally, in FromSoft games, if you read an item descriptions or pay attention to the context and subtext of NPC's dialogue, you could piece together certain quests and where to go. And I mean that generally. Other times, I'm wondering how the hell I would have figured that out, and Millicent's questline really shows that frustration. I had to figure out how to complete it by searching through the internet, which, yeah, the game does encourage cooperation, but I think sometimes it hampers the experience if you are one to accomplish things on your own. This isn't so bad, and I really enjoy that angle. Again, I love Tunic and all the other Soulsborne games for that reason. The issue is sometimes the way to progress is really obscure. Millicent's quest is super elaborate and takes place all over the world, but at certain points, there's barely an idea of a hint of where she might be or how to find her. You get hints about her prosthetic and what kind of relationship she has with other characters, but some are just obscure. At a certain section, you're told that she would travel and she may be able to help you. Alright, that's dope as hell, but where? Also, what indication would I have known that she would show up at this exact spot before I defeat this annoying ass boss? Other quest lines are similar in that regard, so unless you are a hawk parsing every block of text throughout the land, this could feel like it's impossible to resolve without a little bit of web searching. There's also other examples too, like Moog. Moog is a god level boss that appears in a super optional area of Elden Ring. He's pretty tough, but he has a move where he takes a huge chunk of your health 3 times in a row. There are 2 ways to counteract this. You can spam your flask after each hit, so 3 charges, or you can use this obscure item you discovered if you explore the dungeons underneath Lindell Capital, and you were wise enough to read the description and deduce that this was meant to be used against Moog at the Blood Kingdom place, and not underground, because there's another Moog there. I think the common refrain here is, how am I supposed to figure that out? And I don't really have a good response to that one. Elden Ring continues the tradition of hiding its hand a lot and doing things the player is not going to know, and I'm a little split on this. I don't mind a lot of the implementation FromSoft does with its secrets. I really enjoy it because at times, especially when I read a message from another player and it helps me uncover a hidden passage, it feels great. Those moments are amazing. I guess the immersion can be broken when you're trying to figure out specific cues or hints of what to do next, and you gotta talk to some nerds who parse through the code. No offense, I don't think it would be better if FromSoft had some sort of quest log or more direct directions, because that would defeat the purpose. Maybe it wouldn't kill some of the NPCs to give me a general idea of where they'll be. Maybe. While this is annoying, it's not a total deal breaker compared to what I believe is the biggest issue of the game. It's difficulty. Oh, wait. You said difficulty isn't a valid criticism, Mr. December, this way? Yeah, I did, but this is my video and I can say whatever I want. What I mean specifically is the late game difficulty spike. And at about, I don't know, 80-85% of the game, I think it's pretty well balanced. Challenging, but fair. And then we're getting a little past the mountaintop of the giants. There is a dramatic difference in difficulty. Bosses can combo one-shot you, and there isn't much room for mistakes or healing. Deaths feel cheaper than before because the spike happened. And also, at this point, bosses become bigger where the camera feels like another boss fight too. I'll give the benefit of the doubt to the devs though. Again, this is conjecture, so please let me put on my thinking hat and try to figure out what happened here. So before, FromSoft games have generally been linear as far as progression. In order to get to this part, you have to complete this part. You gotta beat this boss, yo, you get the idea. Demon's Souls did have more leeway, but still you have to get through the chapters. So there are branching directions of what to do next, but it's not like you can go straight to the endgame boss right at the start. This works pretty well because you typically won't be able to pass areas unless you're adequately leveled. The devs deliberately design and reward it as they see fit, so the experience is at least consistent. Elden Ring is FromSoft's first open world with an approach to give players the freedom to progress how they please. This presented us certain challenges the devs need to resolve. Now that the players can go almost wherever they want, whenever, there are 3 possible scenarios that plays out when going to a dungeon or fighting a boss. Players were either leveled properly, under-leveled, or overpowered. As much as devs create these freedom-feeling games, there is always a preferred path to completion. And FromSoft still has their kind of set path. If players go through it this way, then generally they are properly leveled. Generally. The issues really stem from being under-leveled and overpowered. If you could do whatever you want whenever, there's a certain chance that you're going to areas where you're not prepared for, or you can clear out dungeons with a little too much ease. The balance is still to provide a challenging and rewarding experience, otherwise players get frustrated quickly and quit, or they're cleaning house and it gets boring. This is the trade-off if you're doing it the way FromSoft did. Real quick, back to Breath of the Wild for a second. While the leveling system is nowhere near as robust as Elden Ring, Nintendo opted to use a scaling system that was hidden from a player. Basically, as you progress, the game was calculating what level you were based on what you've done and scales the world around you. The enemies in the area you've traveled before can become more challenging the deeper you get into the game. There are still zones where it could be more difficult based on the lack of gear and stuff, but nonetheless the scaling occurs. FromSoft did not use scaling and instead used progression system that they used from their previous title. They used a base zone, which is limb grade, and then they added multiplayers to the other zones. Kaled is this X and so on, blah blah blah. If an enemy that's found in limb grade is also in Linedo, that enemy has 5 times the health and damage or whatever the number is. I'm simplifying how this works, but you can check out this spreadsheet for more specific details of the exact numbers. The idea is the difficulty is fixed throughout the entire map. Okay, cool, but what does that have to do with the difficulty spike? Well, that's where you run into diminishing returns. Elden Ring functions on the player gaining runes and smithing stones to gain levels and upgrade their weapons. After all, the point is to become as powerful as we can be. The issue at hand is how FromSoft still provide the challenging experience ingrained in the DNA of their catalog of titles. Well, since this developer is run by an evil man, they bumped up the late game into becoming hardcode mode. Now you can get one shot, you have to time the infinite combos a boss is doing, and dodge ridiculous amounts of AoE. But couldn't that happen elsewhere in the game too? Well, yeah, but the solution became more or less you were technically under-leveled and you need to upgrade your weapons, level up, or the classic mantra, get good. But those kind of deaths or failures weren't cheap. They were mistakes, like responding too soon to a charge attack or punishing attacks because you're spamming dodge roll. These bosses taught patience. The late game bosses borders on unfair. They have steady combos of attacks that last longer than 12 minutes and very short windows of opportunity. The AoEs are so large for some enemies, you have to run away the second you see the wind up. You will get one-shotted or a chunk of your HP is gone. And the dragons get much bigger and the camera doesn't help you at all. I get at a certain aspect you have to make the end game more challenging than the start, but I do think there could have been ways to improve that experience with that difficulty spike. I'm not sure if a scaling system would have been the right answer here. I'm also not really too sure as to what the devs' intention over the end game was. As I said before, there's a plethora of items, moves, and specials you can use for any encounter. I'd imagine when getting to Farm Azul, FromSoft was saying you are going to need to start using these items and stuff, which I get and respect, but most gamers, me, are stubborn as hell. I'm gonna replay the same boss fight with my loadout and not learn a single new thing to win this fight, which I guess that is a me problem, but it does help that there are others who feel sort of the same. I'm not disparaging at how the endgame difficulty is handled. Yeah, there are like speedrunners and masochists out there doing naked runs with a bat at depraved base level. Sure, they prove the game can be beaten that way, but I'm not a masochist, not as much as them. I want to enjoy games too. I don't want to be on my high horse. Video games are meant to be played and beaten. Yes, I know, that's how games are, guys. That's how it is. Elden Ring is a hard game, but it's not impossible. And yeah, eventually I did beat those bosses all over the world. I just think the spike is a little too drastic, but maybe I'm being a little too baby about it. Again, it's a different sense when you're getting one-shotted from an enemy or boss just because of their 12-hit combo you gotta dodge perfectly. This spike could also just be a breaking point for certain players too. Super casual gamers who have gotten further than they'd imagine may get stuck fighting against Malekith or other bosses. This didn't happen to me, but cheap hits do feel cheap. Real long rant, this brings up the overall question of difficulty in these games. It's not a lie these titles are challenging and that it limits the scope of its audience, which kinda sucks. I'm one of those video games are for everyone dorks cause I really do believe that. But Elden Ring as well as other Souls-like aren't really made for everyone. You have to have a certain amount of patience, skill, and determination to get the flow of it. Like, I wouldn't introduce this game to my mom if she says she wants to start getting into video games. This has led to discussions where people argue there should be an inclusion of easy mode or something to make these games more accessible to everyone. My opinion is I disagree, mostly because of author's intent. If this dude wants you to suffer, then by God, let it be. I don't think difficulty modes are bad, but I also think the devs had meticulously worked to tailor the experience for a very specific reason. What's funny is Elden Ring is FromSoft's most accessible game. The open world mechanic gives the edge to players since they would be able to go at their own pace. They're not stuck on the first boss anymore. They can always go somewhere else. And there are many tools like the Spirit Ashes and co-op to take advantage of. Don't get me wrong, it's still challenging for sure, but it's a lot better experience for first timers and newbies. release. But with all that being said, yeah, I did eventually let my guard down and really toyed with the mechanics and weapon arts. I started using spirit ashes and experimented with respecking into certain builds, and you know what? I was finally able to beat more of the late game bosses, so yeah, I guess that design worked, and it was probably a me problem. Damn it. So, yeah, that's the detractors for these games. I think it's pretty fine and cool. Again, the best games out there to have little quirks or mistakes, but if a game is really, really good, those things can be forgiven. But now I want to talk about the real magic sauce of these games. The reason why we love them. If there's something that I'm always going to argue about, is that a lot of times your feelings don't care about facts. I can go on and on and on and on about how these games are amazing or what they do, but let's be real, no one cares. Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring didn't get the praise and flowers because they had all the items on a checklist marked off to get the perfect score or Game of the Year awards. They made people feel good. I made 2 big lists of games I played in the last 2 years, and some games I just decided to make a video essay on just because I wanted to. These games had a profound effect on me, and I thought it was worth the effort to make some dumb videos on them. And now, case in point, I decided to make an hour-plus video on 2 of my favorite games of all time. Whoops. Yeah, cat's out of the bag. These 2 are my top 2. Not necessarily sure which one is 1 and which one is 2. I'm pretty partial to just having it be 1A and 1B, but then I have a hard time figuring out which one is the A and which one's the B. Is this some kind of recency bias? Yeah, probably. I actually think games are getting better and better. I don't necessarily think new games are way better now than all the games back then, but I also give games coming out today a lot of credit. The quote-unquote quality of life probably has something to do with that. Have you played GoldenEye recently? God, I hate that game. It plays so bad on the Switch. Okay, gotta stop these tangents. These games are fantastic because I felt great about playing them, and so did a lot of people. This isn't a cheap feeling too, like makes it feel like Batman trope. These games use all its mechanics and gameplay tricks to get players to have fun and enjoy what they're playing. Breath of the Wild's sense of wonder and scale isn't inviting for all types of players. Most of the time, the tone is serene and whimsical. It has this atmospheric nuance all throughout the world. You are not obligated to really do anything, but you can just live out your time in Hyrule. And it takes itself seriously when the time calls for it. When I started Breath of the Wild a little over 6 years ago, I was so absorbed in its world. That was on the OG Switch's small screen. Hours and hours have passed before I even realized how much time I've sunk into it. One of my favorite moments was walking along the bridge and then hearing gust of winds. Something was going to happen, and then when I looked up and saw one dragon and the music shifted to this I was so enamored. It was maybe like 15 hours into the game and I discovered this amazing dragon, and it was so cool. Not every part of the game replicates this feeling exactly, but Zelda has all the right intrigue for me to keep playing. You feel rewarded for following your intuition. The Koroks are the most obvious example. There are 900 of them. 900 of them. I don't know if you know this, but there are 900 of them. 900 of them. I love that Nintendo doesn't make this collectible be a main feature. They made 900 Koroks so players are able to find the ones that appeal to them, and they hid them so well in the landscape with odd rock formations or random metal sculptures. The player is able to freely uncover what they see, and it's not important to find every single one. Unless you're a completionist, then I guess you can enjoy your little poop. Discovery as a mechanic is not new for sure. Nintendo just made it somehow feel natural. The open-endedness of being able to adventure however you want leans into this real sandbox type gameplay. All the tools are at your disposal. You can get out of any situation whenever you want. You as a player have the freedom, agency, and initiative to play this game by your own prerogative. Breath of the Wild felt like a brand new kind of game, even when it didn't really do anything too different from open world games. I felt like a kid playing the Nintendo 64 for the first time. I was a 25-year-old dude, and I couldn't wait to get home from work and keep playing this game. There's an argument where, yeah, the IP of Zelda lifted the magic of the game since a lot of players have fond feelings for the brand, and I think that's partially true. The devs at Nintendo are just really good at their jobs, but I also can't commend Breath of the Wild for just being a breath of fresh air. Get it? Get it? Get it? Come on, it only took me this long to finally get that joke across. I imagine many people loving the game because they have similar feelings, but it's also very hard to argue against the idea that this game is the blueprint for open world games today, especially considering numerous developers now cite Breath of the Wild as an inspiration for their new game. Which, oh, well, what would you look at that? So after finishing Zelda in 2017, I had a nagging feeling. I wanted to play another Breath of the Wild. I have played some great games since then, but yeah, they didn't wow me to the level Zelda has. I was missing that feeling where I felt like a kid again. And then Elden Ring trapped me with a sense of mystery and scale. This is a Wombo-sized world with an ungodly amount of enemies and bosses to fight. I got caught up exploring its secrets because it is full of them. I'm partial to the description as Breath of the Wild made for adults. Just like previous Miyazaki's FromSoft games, there's a fine level of trolling in Elden Ring. Flashbacks to opening up chests and tensing up in case a mimic appears, having this Crucifix America not actually be helpful, making you feel like you have a moment of reprieve only to discover a freaking surprise boss. It's a game that has it all and you can not do it all. I don't know where or how I got that feeling like a kid again during my first time with Elden Ring. There were so many great moments I kept thinking about, a lot of them involving the bosses. How I gasped when I made a mistake and when I get punished, or that second of relief to replenish my HP. One of my favorite moments was fighting Renala. Not a tough fight, but when she pulled a dragon summon right before she died, I was stunned in awe, thinking this run was done. I kept having those split-second feelings throughout the entire game. Another one came from finding a well in the Sophia River. I traveled on down thinking, oh, it's one of those small dungeons that has an elaborate elevator, but lo and behold, it's another world underneath the main one. There's another world underground. The magic of Elden Ring is discovering what kind of random bullshit is going to happen next, and you can't help but enjoy it. Going to this group of bad guys right at the start, and you're thinking, these are just some chumps. But then as you approach them, they get swarmed and slaughtered by this huge dragon. Obviously puts the fear of God in you over what type of game Elden Ring is going to be. A sense of dread creeped through my spine and hands. I had to methodically clear out enemies so I have the best shot going through dungeons or areas to loot the treasure. Figuring out how to fight Radahn in this grand battle with like 5 other NPCs. Probably my favorite moment was getting my Padrino into the game and helping him play through it and explaining some tidbits. Like I become some kind of Elden Ring lore master. And this is a game where you can really build out your own hero to be in whatever image you want it to be, and the experience dramatically changes like night and day. Elden Ring is not a brand new original game. I think this part is where we could talk about the idea of new or originality. New ideas in this day and age come from remixing other ideas. The technology powering up these games are not necessarily old. I mean, I guess Zelda came out on tech that is similar to the 360 PS3, which is old in tech standards. They're maturing, but we're not going to get the huge jump in immersion unless that space is in VR, which that's a topic for another day. Yeah, there's Unreal engines and RE engines or more powerful systems to be able to handle ray tracing, but that's not exactly the kind of jump like going from 2D to 3D or even this 3D to this 3D. What developers can do is try to take formulas that work and remix or rework them to give them a new breath of life. I'm gonna make this joke now since the dam is open, and that's something Nintendo and FromSoft have done. The Souls-like mechanics of having large and involved interconnected dungeons, deep weapon system, and a sense of open interpretation narrative that has been the staple from Demon Souls, Dark Souls series, Bloodborne, and Sekiro are now set in the open world. And that means a lot of tweaks and small forms of evolution. Stamina not getting drained while you are not in combat is such an easy win. And then big changes like creating a huge interconnected world, save for these stupid places, makes the joke of Elden Ring being Dark Souls 4, 5, and 6 in one game feel true. And this also goes for Zelda, where again, it's a game that wasn't anything brand new, but the sense of an open world that has true open-ended gameplay and experimentation created that new feeling. Like we're playing these games that were made just for us. All in all, what's the takeaway here? It's that Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring are games where you can experience so many different emotions and establish connections with any part of the games. They're both games where your mileage will vary, but that's not a bad thing at all. Some love this game more than others, or vice versa, or they even hate these games. I'm just saying that these two are the best games I've ever played, and why they have such a profound effect on me, which I guess we're at the point where I gotta end it. I got one final point I want to make about the super fantastical sense of these two games. I think they're some of the highest quality forms of art. Now, yeah, sure, our video games are art and stuff, just like how anything is art. I'm just talking about, the kind of art that goes up there like timeless songs, classic novels, and even fine arts you see in the museum. I think there's also a pretty stupid thought to have, but I don't know, it's just a stupid idea I have. Let's break down on my stupid idea real quick. Art is a form of communicating an idea through a medium that elicits emotional or experiential response. Basically, I believe that everything is art. Yeah, I know, it's a pretty cold take or even a coward's take, but that's just what I believe. And as a form of art, there are usual suspects like paintings, sculptures, books, and films. and also video games. Video games as a medium of art is relatively new, as well as this discussion over classifying this medium as art. Again, I think it is. Just because it's not fine art or whatever doesn't make it not art. We're going through an era right now where video games are getting taken seriously in regards to conveying the idea of art. The industry in the United States has been a $100 billion industry for 3 of the last 4 years. And they're being taken seriously as a form of intellectual property, with Mario, a face of video games, getting his own theme park. Avatar had a theme park before Mario. Not to mention the series adaptations like The Last of Us and the TV show. But now to my point, Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring are unique video games in that they demonstrate the potential of video games as a medium of art. The type of medium is important to the art. The messages, themes, and or experiences of the art in question is reliant on using the type of medium to its fullest potential. It's why Into the Spider-Verse is such an amazing film, because everyone who worked on it took full advantage of animation. What these two video games do is contextualize the grandiose nature of going on an adventure. Like, yo, I was riding through fields and blasting monsters and finding treasure and uncovering secrets. That is so freaking cool. And to mention, these games are not adaptable. Yeah, you can't make a movie or TV show on Breath of the Wild or Elden Ring. Sure, you can get the story and write a 10-episode arc on them, but that's not the same as the involvement of the player or the audience to come across the messages, themes, and or experiences you can only get when playing a video game. Recreating a sense of journey right here in these games. And it's your own personal adventure where you make up your own little rules, like a kid declaring the sidewalk crack is forbidden to step on. I played these games and man, do I love them. They can only exist in this state though, because to take them out of it takes away their real secret sauce, the ability to find joy in playing a video game. Sure, I think we can adapt the essence of Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring into a book, movie, TV show, song, painting, or whatever, but I also think our own path through playing with this magic is what makes these games so unique and memorable. Even with all that, so what? I don't know what else to tell you. I wrote over 14,000 words for this video, and wait, oh my gosh, I just realized why these games are so good and why I love them so much. Wow, why did I waste a lot of time doing this? Both The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring felt like video games that were made just for me. That's why they're my favorite. Well, until Tears of the Kingdom comes out. I have a personal connection to these games due to my own experiences and connections. I don't know how true that is for everyone else, but that is true for me. If nothing else, these games have allowed me to be me and play with all the toys however I liked. They were made for me. Not many things evoke that kind of emotion or response, but these games did. And well, that's the time. I hope I kept you engaged throughout this entire video. If nothing else, I hope you are at least entertained, especially if you were eating while watching this video. Before I go, I want to thank all of you for watching and getting all the way to the end. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you want to see more of my stuff, I'd appreciate a sub. And if you want to tell me how much you love, hate, or don't care about this video or these games or anything in general, just comment on the video, please. I'll read them all and I'll give you my hot take. Tight. Well, there you go.